With me now is Foundation for Defense of Democracy's founder and President Cliff on what's been missing from the presidential response, along with former Homeland Security Advisor for the state of New York, Michael Balboni. And Michael basically wrote nearly every single rule on security in the state of New York, along with Disruptor Capital CEO and Fox News contributor Pete Snyder on whether big tech companies are doing enough to prevent the support for ISIS from spreading. Michael, let me start with you. What jumped out at you at this news conference? Because there were a lot of significant headlines.
They weren't going to stop here. They had the capacity, both from the ammunition perspective and then these number of pipes that they could potentially assemble into pipe bombs. They were going to go somewhere else. They meant to live through this experience, go deep perhaps, hide in their house, not get caught, and then perpetrate something else.
They did get caught, though, thanks to local police, we stress, even though now, of course, the FBI doing obviously a bang-up job here, taking over the case because it is now officially a terror investigation. The local police were the ones who got into that shootout with the black SUV, and they were able to at least neutralize and vaporize the two threats at the moment. But thankfully for that, we now find that there are all kinds of issues with these guns, many of which were purchased legally.
And the question, of course, is what kind of preparations did they do? They went to the shooting range. Did people witness that? Was there a pattern? How did they get the guns, the two guns in particular, was bought by that other gentleman? Was it a straw dog purchase? Was it something where they took them from him? And that's going to be answered only by that individual.
Cliff May, as you look at the response from the administration, last night the president, in a very rare Oval Office address to America, went on to make all kinds of comments. And again, today it's the Monday morning quarterbacking. Some people are very disappointed with what the president said. Others seem to be okay with it. Where do you stand on this?
Well, he talks about people becoming radicalized, and he talked in his Saturday address about people falling victim to these ideologies as if it were a virus. Radicalization, these ideologies, what we really are talking about is something I'd call jihadism. And these are ideologies that are being embraced by a lot of people in a lot of different countries and that we're fighting around the world.
Yeah, it doesn't just happen to you. It is a choice that you make as to whether you are radicalized.
It's a choice you make. It's an ideology, a belief system you embrace, and it's a powerful one. Consider that these are young parents. They have a 6-month-old daughter. They made the decision to leave her as an orphan, marked for life as the daughter of terrorists, so they could go and kill infidels, random infidels for the most part, on one day. They were joining an army and they were engaging in a jihad. We need to understand what that means, and we need to have a strategy to fight it in all its many forms, and we don't. All these years after 9/11, all these years after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, we still have no strategy and no coherent analysis of the problem and the ideology that threatens us.
It's an electronic army as well as a physical army, is it not, Pete? Because she was the one who went to Facebook, made that post saying that she had handed herself over to the idea of ISIS. Mysteriously, that post was taken down. We're hearing all kinds of things as to whether it was really Facebook who jumped on the case and said that's got to come down. But right now, there are a lot of other organizations and social media sites, Twitter namely, that seem to be very much a breeding ground for this. Are they in a way responsible at the moment for some of what is spreading here electronically and this pixelated army?
Liz, it certainly is a pixelated digital army out there, but I don't think you can put blame at Facebook or Twitter or any of the platforms out there for what is really human beings' behavior. Now, the question is, what can technologies do to help? Well, they can certainly provide a whole lot more intellectual firepower. I think we all have some serious doubts and complaints about our government's efficiency and effectiveness out there. So from an innovation perspective, there's a lot that technology in Silicon Valley can do to help in this effort. The question is, what are they going to do when it comes to issues of privacy or encryption or giving the government a backdoor into everyone's devices out there?
Well, people began screaming and yelling when Verizon was helping the Egyptian government during the Arab Spring, and you've got to be. It's a very difficult line to walk. But one thing for sure, Michael, as you stood and you wrote many of these rules here in New York to keep New Yorkers safe, it appears to be working. What does the rest of the country need to adopt right now?
They have to get to a baseline of security, and that what we really have to do is we have to step back and we have to also look at the other causes. As I said, what do we What is the message? What turns somebody? How do we counter that? That's not necessarily at the state level, but it's at the entire community level. The other thing that the states need to do is they need to appreciate the fact that this can happen, unfortunately, anywhere. We've thought about that for a while, but we've never really seen the example. This is the example that now says to people, soft targets, is there a baseline of security we can do? Can we train our employees? Can we give them a little bit more information? Are there alerting systems within a company? You know, a one-button lockdown for doors. You know, and it applies to so many things, not just this type of an attack. School shootings, any of the type of shootings we've seen, unfortunately, there are elements that we can provide for protection. So how do we get there? How do we resource them? How do we encourage people to adopt that kind of security posture?
Cliff, going back to the administrative response, what have we seen? We have seen the airstrikes continue, but many of these airstrikes tend to not really be effective because they don't fit into the realm of the so-called rules of engagement. I know you're not specifically a military guy, but at some point there is that feeling that if we don't pile it on over there, it will come here. As we saw in San Bernadino, much of it already has. Although it was important to stress what we just saw in that news conference from Agent Bowditch is that they haven't really been able to sort of establish that link at the moment.
Yeah, well, we've, I'm afraid, allowed fires to burn out of control in the Middle East, and the sparks are reaching Paris, they're reaching Chattanooga, they're reaching California, they're reaching Boston and a lot of other places, and they will continue to do so. I don't think, from what we've heard from the president, that he intends to even try to solve this problem. He will leave it for the next president, for the next administration, and that administration needs to start thinking now what needs to be done. Among other things, you cannot, in the time of war, and this is a time of war, be diminishing your military. You must analyze this problem properly. The administration was recently saying this is about joblessness, this is about lack of opportunity. These were middle-class people we saw here who apparently committed these crimes and this act of terrorism. We need to understand the problem. We need to have a grand strategy, and it has to be the major priority. It can't come second to climate change, to Obamacare, to gun control. We need to have an administration that is dedicated to wiping out, to defeating jihadism. And we've not had that up to now.
And then now, of course, it's revealed that Syed Farouk, the male in that picture we just showed you, had spoken out about how he wanted to attack Israel. But of course, the president spent quite a bit of time last night talking about making sure that Muslim Americans are protected when we know the situation right now is very, very tentative. Thank you all. Cliff May, Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, Michael Balboni, former New York State Homeland Security, and Pete Snyder, Disruptor Capital founder. We appreciate it. We've got that closing